Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today I want to start off not with a viewer question. We'll get back to those tomorrow, and I've been backlogging some really good ones from you guys. But today I want to talk about a potential viewer opportunity, and that's that I am currently engaged in a Twitter drive for more followers. I'm so close to 16,000. I'm about like 120 followers away. So as I tweeted over the weekend, when I hit 16,000 followers, I will randomly call 5 of you. So if you've ever been on the fence about following me, I hope that that will be some incentive for you to finally do so. Now, the way it's going to work, because I got some questions when I tweeted that out, so I wanted to explain. What's going to happen is when I hit 16,000 followers, I will say, who wants a phone call? I'll tweet that out. And then if you tweet me back that you do, you'll go in for the random drawing. And then once, I'll give some time for everyone to respond. And then once I get everyone who's interested in a phone call speaking with me, we'll say like 5 minutes on Skype. So it can be anyone. You don't have to be like just in the United States. But it's gonna be just a voice call because I don't want any crazy surprises. This is the first time we'll be talking in person, so we'll just do a voice call on Skype, and we can talk about movies, comics, or TV, anything in those topics that you like. And so again, once you say that you're interested in a phone call, I'll randomly pick 5 of you, and we'll set up a time to talk on Skype. Now, some of you also pointed out that with 16,000 followers and just 5 phone calls, the odds are not in your favor. Well, I just wanted to assure you that this is something I'm going to try and do a little bit more regularly. Well, actually, just regularly. I've never done it before, but I don't want you to feel just because you don't get one of the 5 phone calls this time that it's not worth following me on Twitter. Although I try to tweet and live follow, like the award shows are coming up, like Golden Globes and the Oscars. I'll be live tweeting those. I ask people to tweet me their movie tickets, for the big films, and we'll be doing that for both Mockingjay and Star Wars. And then also, again, this is what I wanted to say. The subscription service sometimes on YouTube does not work. So if you follow me on Twitter, you're guaranteed to get notices whenever one of my new videos goes up. So anyway, I'll do this when I hit other landmarks, be they something like, let's say, on YouTube or on Twitter, and so you could get a call in the future. But anyway, that's just a little something I'm doing over on Twitter. I wanted you to know about it because while I announced it on Twitter, obviously, I want you to follow me on Twitter, and if you don't, you wouldn't know about that opportunity, so I just wanted to talk about it today. All right, so let's get on to today's morning movie news, and again, the viewer question will return tomorrow. And I have a number of really good viewer questions from you guys already backlogged. If you didn't hear yours today, and you asked it over the past few days, it doesn't mean I'm not going to get to it. I've been saving them. All right, so anyway, let's get to today's stories, where we kind of have a theme. I like to have a theme if I can, and today's theme is the fine print. All right, so we're going to start out with Star Wars tickets. A number of you have been tweeting me about the advanced sales, which of course gummed up the works when it came to the internets, crashed Fandango, AMC's website, etc. And a number of you have been saying, well, how much money was that? How much money was sold? I can't find that number anywhere. Well, the number's not being released. We'll find out when Star Wars hits theaters. But anyway, some other statistics have been released, and they're very interesting. And I think it highlights that Star Wars is still a big question mark when it comes to its long-term prospects. All right, so listen to this. This is fascinating. So they surveyed who purchased tickets, and 70% of those who purchased advance tickets for Star Wars The Force Awakens were male. 70%, that's amazing. And they all fell in those 70% fell in the 18 to 49 age group. So it's this older skewing viewer, and the average age was 34. So that means they're not getting the teenagers, right? So, that's like usually a sweet spot for Hollywood. In Hollywood, though, that used to be the sweet spot for Hollywood. They're having a really hard time coaxing teenagers to go to the multiplex instead of, be on their phones and on YouTube, etc. So that's interesting that even Star Wars wasn't able to do that. So again, 70% male, 18 to 49, average age 34. Then most of them are regular moviegoers, meaning they go at least once a month. Now, we've talked about before that the majority of moviegoers don't go at least once a month. That's very rare. So that's not who purchased these tickets. Also, most of them spend 2.5 times more on the box office than the usual moviegoer. And also 2/3 of the people who bought tickets for Star Wars The Force Awakens not only go to see blockbusters opening weekend, but they usually go opening night. So really what you have here is a situation where everyone who would see Star Wars, let's say like in the first few weeks, right? Or the first, let's say just actually first week, went and bought their tickets all at the same time, and that's why the system crashed, right? It seems from these statistics they weren't able to entice any non-first weekend moviegoers to purchase a ticket, which is really fascinating, right? It's, when you hear, oh, we crashed Fandango, we crashed AMC theaters, you think, wow, people are coming out of the woodwork that normally never buy a movie ticket. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Star Wars just got the people who would buy a ticket anyway to just do it all at once. So this makes the counter-programming that's going on with Star Wars seem to make even more sense. It's the Tina Fey, Amy Poehler comedy Sisters, and with 70% male audience, it seems like a lot of women are up for grabs. And this is very interesting because Daisy Ridley's supposed to be the star, and Kathleen Kennedy has done quite a bit to promote this. Yet for some reason, there's very little female appeal going on here. And then also there's Alvin and the Chipmunks 4, The Road Chip, and that, of course, is a family, younger skewing audience, and those people seem to also be up for grabs. And it looks like they won't be able to get into Star Wars because everybody's got, rushed in there who would, usually, and just filled up all the space, but there's nobody new joining them. It's just the usual people, just condensed. So I thought that was really fascinating to break that down and to see a more clear picture come together of the Star Wars The Force Awakens audience. And I'm really curious to see how this movie does in the long run. Will it just be incredibly front-loaded? That's, I think, the big question mark now, and something that Lucasfilm and Disney are going to have to work very hard to make sure is not the case. How are they going to make these other people who didn't buy the tickets go to see the movie, especially because it's so crowded during the holiday movie season? You also have the Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg comedy Daddy's Home coming out. There will be competition, and also all the awards contenders like The Revenant, etc. All right, so let's move on to the second story of the day, talking about awards contenders, and that's Steve Jobs. Now, we talked about it a little bit on Movie Math yesterday, that it went wide over the weekend and disappointed. It only opened in 7th place with 7.2 million. That's really dismal when it was projected to open like in the 20s, right? In its wide release. And a really interesting thing happened, which is why we're talking about it again today, and that there seemed to be some kind of damaged spin control going on in the Hollywood Reporter on Sunday evening. And what happened was there was a big article saying, and the headline was Amy Pascal right to pass on Steve Jobs? Because they had predicted that it would only ultimately gross in the 30 million range without a big star. Leonardo DiCaprio at one time was approached to star in Steve Jobs, but he turned it down, I believe partially because Steve Jobs' widow asked him not to do it. Christian Bale would not have been a big star. I mean, if you look at Christian Bale's box office outside of Batman and outside of Jennifer Lawrence being in his movie American Hustle, he's not a big grosser. So anyway, that was the big headline, was Amy Pascal right. And I thought that was pretty nervy. But then it got even worse. And if I was Michael Fassbender's management, I would be like really trying to correct this because I think it's incorrect. So what happened? Well, they said, Sony was right in saying that this movie needed a big star. And so that means that Michael Fassbender perhaps is not a box office draw. That's actually what this article said. And this is the Hollywood Reporter, no less. So this is an industry trade that people in the industry therefore read. And so people in the industry are reading that maybe Michael Fassbender is to blame for the lack of box office for Steve Jobs. And then they actually called into question Assassin's Creed, what its box office might be, as well as the Snowman movie that, that's not a fun movie. That's like a crime movie in Norway that's supposed to take place. But so I thought that was just absolutely amazing. And that was like a really surprising turn that Michael Fassbender, who was willing to make this movie, would therefore then get blamed for its lack of box office gross. Now, I've talked about this with a few people since I saw that article because it was so shocking, and we all kind of agreed that Michael Fassbender has a huge fan base, and he's in the X-Men movies, and I think he's a big part of that draw. And I think that audiences are interested in Michael Fassbender's work quite a bit. And I think that I saw some people commenting on this in the comment section on this Hollywood Reporter article, and I think they hit the nail on the head. And that's that what Universal, where they made the mistake, was in how they decided to release the movie, and that they did it in a slow rollout, where for 2 weeks it played in very limited release. And they said, I also think, the Steve Jobs movie, there's no reason to see that on the big screen, and so it's also suffering from that. This is the kind of movie that you don't need to pay to see on in a theater, right? I don't think it's Michael Fassbender's fault. I think he deserves to be nominated. Even though I didn't love the movie, I really do honestly think he deserves to be nominated for an Oscar for his performance. I don't know if he should win, but he should definitely be nominated. But anyway, because it was a slow rollout, anyone who was interested in it couldn't see it the weekend it came out, despite a huge media push. So and a number of you even said that. You were like, I remember your comments in the videos being like, I'd like to see this, but it's not playing anywhere near me. So by the time 2 weeks passed and it did go wide, I think that audience, had moved on because, the excitement kind of went out of it. You didn't get to see it the first 2 weeks it was out. So, at that point, I think a lot of people are like, well, there are other movies I want to save my money for. It's Halloween. I want to see Halloween Fair. I want to see The Martian. I'm saving my money for, James Bond and Mockingjay and Star Wars. I'll just rent this. So it's not Michael Fassbender's fault. It's the studio's fault for how they decided to release the film, roll it out. And it's also just the fact that it's a small movie that perhaps didn't belong on the big screen. And it wasn't fair to ask moviegoers to pay so much money to see it. So that's my opinion on it. And I'm curious to hear what you think of it. And also, what do you think of the fact that they're trying to pin it on poor Michael Fassbender? Wow, that just goes to show you, there's no loyalty in Hollywood. If you're going to be in a movie, you better make sure it's going to do well at the box office because it could be blamed on you. All right, so although Emily Blunt's like, tell me about it, although she's had a lot of flops. And I don't know if Michael Fassbender, if Assassin's Creed doesn't do well, then he's in major trouble, then because, The Counselor didn't do well. I mean, he can point to a lot of his other films, and they're very tiny, small films that you wouldn't think would do really well. But, Assassin's Creed, if he can't deliver there, and I think he will, though. I think he really will. It's problematic. But anyway, he's a little bit like Tom Hardy. I don't think Tom Hardy has yet really delivered at the box office either, because with Mad Max, I think that really ended up being Charlize Theron's movie. But anyway, let's move to the third story of the day, and that's Ricky Gervais. And he will be hosting the Golden Globes again. He will be returning, back to the hosting gig that he made so infamous, but also very highly watched, and which he left after a lot of people getting upset with him, particularly in Hollywood, saying, I don't want to attend the award ceremony if it's going to be like a shooting range situation, and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. And so he's like, I'm not coming back. You don't want me back. I'm not going to do whatever again. Then Tina Fey and Amy Poehler hosted for a few years. But now, when Chris Rock was, I think, brought back, and he was also very contentious, by the way, to host the Oscars, I think it clearly was, the Oscars' attempt to capture the magic of the Ricky Gervais Golden Globe ceremonies. So the Golden Globes very smartly were like, well, why don't we just get Ricky Gervais back if they're trying to copy what we did with Ricky Gervais? And they did. He agreed to do it because, what is Ricky Gervais really doing? He said he didn't want to do it, but that's coming off the high of the Golden Globes shows that he did host and, feeling like he was on top of the world. But, he's not on the top of the world right now. And so I think this will do a lot to put him back in the spotlight and, give his career a little bit of a pick-me-up so he can coast on it again for a while. So the really big reason I wanted to, I'm curious, who do you think will do the better job hosting, and which are you more excited for now? Which telecast? The Academy Awards with Chris Rock, or the Golden Globes with Ricky Gervais? Gervais is going to go first, and I'd be curious to see. They could have a little bit of a friendly competition going on to see how many careers each can ruin. So anyway, the thing that I really wanted to talk about is whether or not the Golden Globes is a worthless ceremony, right? I saw a number of people when this news broke saying the Golden Globes are worthless. They're fun for entertainment value, but they don't really mean anything. And I think that's incorrect. Now, they are really decided in a very poor manner, right? It's just the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. It's a very small group of members, and they're the ones who vote on who should win, and they can be easily bribed. This is very well known in Hollywood. They can be bribed with dinners, trips, gifts, and it works, and it's worked in the past. And also they hedge their bets by having two different categories, musical comedy and drama, so that they can nominate double. I mean, they can not only have double the nominations, but they can have double the wins. And so it's a pretty good racket they have going there. But here's why it's not worthless as far as an award ceremony goes. I'd say after the Oscars, it's the most well known with the general public. In terms of people tuning in. And also, they're a pretty good predictor of who's going to win. I mean, even though it's the Hollywood Foreign Press Association voting and not the guilds, the Screen Actors Guild, the Producers Guild, the Directors Guild, those are very good signs as to who's going to win the Oscars because they have a lot of voter overlap, right? But the Golden Globes still largely gets it right. I mean, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association really seems to have their finger on the pulse of Hollywood, right? Even though Hollywood's not voting, it's the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Association. So I think that they're a very good predictor of the Oscars. I think a Golden Globe win gives you a lot of momentum towards the Oscars. And also, I mean, I'm not sure how it's going to line up this year, but in the past, the Academy has still been voting when the Golden Globes are held. The Golden Globes are in early January this year, like the second weekend of January, and the Oscars are in late February. So, so not only do they affect voters for the Academy, but they have an effect on box office. I mean, the media and the public pay attention to who wins at the Golden Globes. So it helps careers and it helps awards campaigns. And so it is important. It does matter. It's a big awards ceremony. And again, as I said, I believe it's second to the Oscars. Those are the big two, no matter how much the SAG Awards tries to build itself up. BAFTA, I think, is getting a little momentum. I think those are like the really only big awards that people really pay attention to. But still, it's really just the Oscars and the Golden Globes. That's your award season. That's what everybody pays attention to. And so they do matter. And so I'm curious to see how they turn out this year and what you think of the host situation. So that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories. And then also, if you want to follow me on Twitter, this is my handle right here. This is my handle, and it's I try to put on every video. And I hope, you don't have to follow me, but I hope you will consider it. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.